Star Trek The Next Generation has money abolished even, so because we don't need it anymore because we're so evolved. And then what actually happened with the future is we found different ways to turn ourselves into stupid zombies on phones, and it's such a disappointment in terms of how that reflects on human nature. Today, for your convenience, I have read the entire book of one of the prophets in the Old Testament, who I don't know how to say. Again, though, admittedly, this is not a massive feat. Didn't save you a huge amount of time because it's less than 2 pages. I'll show you. That's the whole book of that guy. Sounds like the mayor from the 90s computer game Final Fight. Not quite sure how to say it. It's annoying it ends in AI, though, because I guess even in biblical times you just couldn't get away from the boring drone of people banging on about AI. I'm going to go with Haggai, I think. Haggai. Seems alright. We'll try that anyway and see how we go. So Haggai, anyway, seems to be a normal dude, toddling along in the same way as these prophets do, and then they record the point at which God suddenly turns up and says, "Ha, surprise, you're now a prophet." And Haggai's job is to talk to Zerubbabel, who may have one of the best names in the Bible. That's ridiculous, isn't it? There's a cat in here. Who is the governor of Judah. So in terms of the history, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes of Israel, have all been kicked out to Assyria ages ago. This takes place after the Jews, being the tribe of Judah with some Benjaminites, being broadly referred to as Jews, are kicked out of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. King Darius then allows them to come back, which we already knew because it was in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah and all the rest of it. So Zerubbabel was appointed and mentioned back in Ezra to say he was going to be the governor of Judah. So Haggai's job, come along, relay a message from God to Zerubbabel, basically. I'm going to read a short part from chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, just because partly this helps explain what's happening here, but also it's a really profoundly interesting take on human nature. So I think that will be really useful, for which we need the keeper of the book. And this says, "Now this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages, only to put them in a purse with holes in it." I really like that one, because it seems to tell you what's going on here, which is basically that Haggai is saying that the Jews are not quite doing what they should be doing and God wants them to do something else. Which, to be fair, Zerubbabel is a really sort of honourable chap, it seems, and she does what he's told. Right, okay, yeah, fine, I'm supposed to be building God's temple, so I shall get on with building God's temple. Great, it's gone nice when it goes to plan like that. But that's also a really interesting take on human nature, I think, in the sense that we are definitely programmed to do things that aren't particularly useful for us. I think an example I was talking about the other day, all the old TV shows that showed the future and stuff, it had us doing great things and achieving these wonderful things, and Star Trek The Next Generation has money abolished even, so because we don't need it anymore because we're so evolved. And then what actually happened with the future is we found different ways to turn ourselves into stupid zombies on phones, and it's such a disappointment in terms of how that reflects on human nature. But that is it. And this would seem to reflect that. You say you're doing all the wrong stuff. You think you're doing something, but actually you're not. You're just wasting your life away and you're not doing what's important. You need to get your priorities right. I guess that ties back to this whole idea of sin being missing the mark. So if you're aiming at the wrong thing, and the cat's making lots of noise. Cat, come here. No, stop it. Come say hello. Beep. This is the cat. Say hello. Yes, hello. I really like that anyway. When you stumble across things in the Bible that have that sort of profound wisdom that does apply still today. As in Proverbs, I thought was very good for that as well. So it's nice to find a little bit of that here. Another interesting bit in here is we again have a repeat of this idea that God likes of the carrot and stick. God tends to prefer the stick, and then he's sort of slightly surprised. It almost sounds like when he's beaten people and they don't come running to him for it. And it's I guess in a Stockholm syndrome kind of way, that's kind of that could happen, I suppose, but it doesn't seem obvious that would be the response if you're struck with things. But in chapter 2, verse 17, God says, "I struck all the work of your hands with blight, mildew and hail, yet you did not return to me." And it's like, well, I don't know, in my head, why would you return to you if you've just done horrible things? You'd want to go away from that, you'd think. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's perhaps more something in my head, that the carrot and stick is only ever going to work one way round, I think. You incentivise. Well, I suppose that a stick is an incentivisation, isn't it? I guess God has sent all these prophets to explain that this is why this is happening. All you've got to do is be faithful and live righteously, whatever it was, and you will be fine, which isn't a lot to ask particularly, is it? But yeah, no, it's an interesting idea that keeps popping up. And then last but not least, there's an interesting one that chapter 2 starts halfway through a sentence. It's really odd. And it made me wonder, because I've heard people sort of grumble, as it were, about where the chapter divisions are and the verse divisions. And I had no idea where they came from. So I looked those up. And the chapters were formalised back in the 1200s. So a long time after the Bible was written. And eventually it was formalised. And it seemed to be so you could standardise across different variants or something like that. So some sort of... It sounds like it was important and needed doing. And obviously it's a big old book. I mean, we're 949 pages in at this point. And then the verses were in the 1400s. But I guess it's a big book, I suppose. So at this point, it's 949 pages in. You think someone's getting a bit slapdash, and we'll just put the chapter and verse will start here, even though it's in the middle of a sentence. But never mind. Anyway, yeah, so that's basically Haggai telling Zerubbabel, kind of gently, I think, that you're not quite doing it right. You need to sort of slightly amend what you're doing and do it this way. And Zerubbabel turns around and says, yeah, all right, cool, we'll do it that way. And everything seems to be fine. But yeah. So that was book 37 of the Old Testament. We now have 2 more to go, which are all going to be out today as well, just because the whole thing, the live thing is happening tomorrow. But yeah, we'll go on and see what the next one is.